Do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks. Perfect. I'm glad you were here for it.
we got the nice stretch.
Tell tell the viewers, listeners, how long have you two been married, and then how long have you two been coaching other married couples that are entrepreneurial?
So 19 and 7. So married
Man,
19, and we've been coaching married entrepreneurs for about 7.
I always love when you ask a husband how long they've been married, and you can immediately see like the eye roll toward upward, like how long? Oh, especially got the wife sitting right next to him.
I always know.
What got you into that?
It happened. So, I was 25 years in corporate marketing and sales for Fortune 500 companies. I was working for Coca-Cola and Big Pharma and all that. So never had I ever thought about having my own business until I met Kay Lee, who grew up in a, family business. And she just, actually, we were still dating, and she just said, "Oh, I can see you having a business." And I'm just like, "No, that's too risky."
Yeah.
He was like dead set against it.
I was like,
Sure.
I get a good paycheck, I get bonus, I get company car, I get a lot of benefits. I'm like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good. But, as probably about 12, 13 years ago, I did start to dabble thinking about, well, what do I really want to do long term? Because, I'm in my mid 40s, so probably that midlife crisis thing starts shaking
Sure.
up. Like, what do I really want to be doing the rest of my life? Is it here in the corporate environment, or is it something else? And so it's almost like, you want to make that decision because you want to have more years to do whatever you think that is to do. So if it's going to stay corporate, then do I climb up the corporate ladder,
Yeah.
whatever, or start a business? We need time to, develop it, right? So I just started dabbling in doing some marketing consulting since that was my background, and just helps out some friends. And then I liked that, and I just started charging. So I enjoyed that process, and I said, I like this. And because I thought when I started consulting was I was looking at it as paid market research to find the business I wanted to start.
Right.
So I started consulting with all kinds of business. But then I realized I really like consulting. I like the coaching and consulting part, getting to the analytics, building strategy, but also the coaching and really working with the business owner, because I purposely did not want to focus on more corporate clients. I wanted more small business. I just had a heart for small
Sure.
business. And so I said, okay, I think this is it. And about 9 years ago, I left the corporate environment to focus on consulting full time. But then I quickly realized that, they hired me for marketing help, but as I'm looking into the business and digging into it, and I started looking
Hmm.
at the financials and all that, I was like, you guys are working way too hard. So,
Yeah.
harder than you need to. I mean, not that
Right.
hard work, you don't do hard work, but I said you're working harder than you need to.
They're doing more hours and more things
Yeah.
on stuff that doesn't
So,
matter.
yeah, so margins are small both in time and money, right? They're just doing more work, putting more hours in to try to cover up the inefficiencies and the lack of margin, both in the profitability standpoint and also even in time. And so then, one by one, as you get to know the clients, they start talking about their personal life and then ultimately their home life. And you see that their marriage or family life is struggling because they're putting so much time and effort in the business
Hmm.
that the family was taking a back seat, or we like to call it the business was a mistress in the relationship.
Ooh.
And so that's when I looked at Kaylee. I said, I think there's a thing here. There's like an elephant in the room they don't want to talk about and deal with. That the business is stealing time away from family time, and it's costing their relationship. Even if they're still married, it just the relationship's not healthy. And they don't want that, but they just don't know what else to do. And so I started looking at like resources. What's stuff out there for married business owners, especially married business owners, because it's only about six. I had to extrapolate some data, but it's only about 6.7% of the population are married and have a business, right? It's only population-wise, only about 9% of the population actually run a business.
Yeah.
The rest of it, it's all, they're working, right? Or employees or W-2s, whatever. So it's a really small segment of people that understand the stress that business and marriage creates, that tension that's unique, right? Relatively unique.
Hmm.
And I didn't see any resources for that. And so I just said, we went to 2 years of counseling before we even got married. That's another story. You can ask the
Good
question
night.
That's in our book.
and we developed tools that have helped us. Especially when we run the business, we have to lean on those same tools, not only to have a healthy marriage, but how do you do business and balance that and all that, and even work together. So we just started implementing, just started giving that to our clients. And then next thing you know, I said, you know what, let's just formalize this thing and say, if you're going to hire us, we don't want to just build a business. We want to make sure you're intentional about building your family. Because we've also had clients that their business is healthy, like the new client we just picked up, they're doing great financially. On paper, they're doing great,
Sure.
but their marriage is struggling. And I said, we can help you. So it doesn't, the money issue isn't as important as the intentionality in building your business. And so that's kind of how it just kind of led into this.
And that was kind of like my childhood story. I'm
Yeah.
third generation entrepreneur. And the go-to with a lot of small businesses, as Robert says, is just put in more time. We don't keep track of metrics or what's working,
No.
what's not.
We're just to
That's just the
go.
go-to because we just don't know. We're wearing so many hats. And my dad worked 6 days a week, having his own business, wasn't home a lot. It was really tough on the family. My mom practically raised four strong-willed children, God bless her,
Hmm.
and our family shattered. And when you're a child, you just want your parents to be home with you, to play ball and hang out.
Yeah. So what kind of business was it, Kaylee?
It was a feed store,
A feed store.
correct? Like
For animal
horse
feed.
food, dog
Yeah,
food.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm in Middle Tennessee. I know what a feed store is.
I
I'm
was gonna
making
say,
sure
I
we're on
hope
the
you do,
same
because they're probably
page.
right next door to you.
Yeah. I grew up in a family that had a family-owned business. I had multiple family-owned businesses. It started off as a Curtis Mathis franchise. That y'all may not remember those, but
Yeah, Nate sounds better.
oh my gosh, it was like the TV that wouldn't die, which was great. The TV that lasts for multiple generations, but it's not a good business model. So it turned into Alexander's Electronics and then Alexander's Satellite, and then Alexander's eventually furniture store, and then that was a mattress store as well. And either way, but everybody in the family at some point had worked there. Whether it was just children, mom, dad, literally uncles, cousins. And oh my God, the stories that I could tell, well, and you would already know, and that everybody else, but and that's the reason you guys have your podcast thriving in tandem is because that's something a lot of folks don't talk about. They just you hear a mention of family-owned business, and it's either like a boom or bust.
Yeah.
And for us, it did boom and bust. There were family members that did great, that worked above and beyond, and there were some that, oh my gosh, just looked for conflict, looked to stir the pot. So starting there for anybody that has, couples that owns their own business, and I do one-on-one coaching, have for 18 years. Some of my best business owners are couples, but they got something figured out, the rest don't.
Mhm.
So what is the best way for them to avoid conflict,
Well, I think
or
the
should
key
they?
word is not to use that word avoid. It's
Ha
not
ha
about
ha.
avoiding, it's about dealing with it. Conflict is not bad.
Hmm.
It's how you deal with it. Because conflict is just differences of opinions, but the conflict happens when you're not able to come to agreement and it just becomes a major issue, right? So it really just starts at just different viewpoints that you can't reconcile, and then it just becomes conflict. So, but conflict itself isn't bad, it's just how you deal with it. And it's actually healthy to have those moments of disagreement because, in a business, right, you don't hire people that have the same exact viewpoint you do. You want to have
Right.
differing viewpoints because, an accountant sees things a little bit differently than a marketing person. And we've certainly had, in the corporate environment, we certainly had conflicts between marketing and finance because we want to sell as much product as possible. They want to make sure we make money, right?
Sure.
both
That's
are
right.
both are good, are valid issues, but we do need to say we need to make money, and
Yeah.
we can't just sell it at the sake of, or forfeiting our profits, which would damage the business long term, right? I mean, profits are necessary for you to reinvest and build a healthier business, and so you need both. So how do you reconcile that, and so come to agreement, and how do we accomplish both issues? And so knowing how to resolve issues and not make a disagreement become a major conflict and and create stalemates in an organization, or whether it's at home or business, when you have these conflicts you can't resolve, you're at stalemate and you can't grow, you can't move. And so how do we resolve these issues is the biggest thing. And especially with couples, especially when they're working together, I think business issues become very personal,
Yeah, they
and
do.
all of a sudden baggage gets thrown out, becomes revealed. And so we have to not make these disagreements personal. Even at home, it's the same thing. We don't want to make the disagreements personal. We want to make sure we're not just triggering each other, calling each other names or being accusatory or whatever, but create an environment that we can have a healthy conversation to be moving forward. And so, yeah.
And wasn't that one of
Yeah.
the reasons why you didn't want to work together?
Yes.
Work together.
Thank you, honey. Thank you, honey, for revealing the dirty laundry. But yes, that's in the book. Yeah, when I first started the consulting business, I was kind of dabbling on this. It's kind of it was started as a side hustle, and she would ask me, "What can I do to help?" And I said, "No, I'm good. I got this."
Hmm.
And it was just in the back of my mind saying, "I don't think that would be good for our relationship if we work together." So that was the thinking. But she persisted, and so slowly giving her more duties, more duties, more duties, and we've learned that we can work well together because we've learned, in those 2 years of counseling before we got married, we developed the counselor gave us tools on how to resolve issues. So we'd already worked, when we were in counseling before we even got married, we'd worked through finance issues, in-law issues, where we
Hmm.
live, all the major stuff that couples deal with in marriage, we dealt with a counselor. And not only did we resolve these issues, but we learned these tools like, giving each other space, like I need space to think a little bit more or whatever. Or if we have if things get heated, we will ask for a timeout and they said, okay, we'll pick it up, in a couple hours. We don't just
Okay.
leave the person hanging. We don't say, let's talk about it later. We say, let's talk about it later, but this is when we'll talk about it. Right. So things as simple as that really helps calm things down because if I leave her hanging and tell her, let's talk about it later, in a lot of relationships, later just means I hope you don't bring it up again.
Right. I'm putting this off.
Right.
And then I'm not happy.
And then she's not happy. And so,
It creates all this anxiety.
yeah, so
Sure.
just simple things like that. But we've learned all these different tools to be able to deal with these issues. And so, because of that, we've been able to work well together too. So, yeah, so that's kind of a long way to answer that question. Not
Well,
deal.
in but that gives me new questions. So, like, humor me? What's one or two common conflicts you see in a family-owned business, and then kind of what do you do to deal with it?
So, money issues always number one.
Hmm.
At home and in business. There's money issues. And then there's usually within their roles, a lot of times you're seeing that one is overstepping their boundaries of, everybody's got their role, right?
Yeah.
Certain, yeah. But a lot of times they're either overriding or they're undermining or whatever. And so, there's the finance conversation, but then there's also overstepping your boundaries on roles. So you've given your wife or your husband a role like in whether it's operations or marketing or whatever, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea," and you override it, right? That's not good, especially when it's in front of
Right.
the team member, in front of the team.
And we've had that happen a lot. The husband would be doing a great job, and then the wife would just come in, or vice versa, and just take over and totally humiliate him in front of everybody and shame him and guilt him. And then all the employees are feeling uncomfortable. Then the spouse is not happy and, causes a lot of conflict in the marriage. And then they're not able to move forward in their business because they have all this resentment. And it just keeps stacking higher and higher of all the
Hmm.
things that they can't resolve and talk about.
Yeah, it's
Well,
almost
let's
like the team is almost like witnessing a family issue,
Hmm.
play out in front of them, and that's not healthy.
yeah. Well, and I remember, employees when they would see families family members arguing at work, like, they joke like, "I feel like I'm the kids at the dining room table and mom and dad are fighting." It's like,
Hmm.
Hmm.
you don't know what to say, what to do. So go back. You said money issues, and it sounds like boundary issues. Go back to the money issue. What's some of the common money issues, and then what do you tell folks to do to resolve that, or what tools do you have for them to not to minimize it?
Well, it's usually like whichever spouse is kind of in control of the finances. For some reason, every now and then they're not always transparent. And then one's asking for more information, and the other one's not. It's almost like holding things close to the vest for one reason or the other. And it's not ever that they're hiding anything. There's nothing bad or malicious going on financially. It's just for whatever reason, either if numbers aren't good, maybe they just feel like personally, guilty for
Sure.
finances aren't doing well or whatever.
Or maybe
Or
they don't like
maybe
being questioned.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or maybe the books aren't quite the way it should be. Maybe we're not getting accurate
Maybe
information,
I haven't updated QuickBooks in 3 months.
and there could be
Mm-hmm.
that. We've had that.
Oh yeah. Maybe
Reckon,
we just haven't got around to doing the bookkeeping,
yeah,
so I don't know
yeah,
where we're at financially. And
yeah.
when you say
Re-
that, it makes me like anxious or anxiety because I feel like you're judging me because I've not kept
sure,
up with it.
Or actually, when I put you in charge of QuickBooks.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Robert
I
is like very detailed. I'm more creative, and he
sure,
asked me to do the bookkeeping, and I didn't want to say no. I thought, oh, I don't really like this, but I could do it. I know it would be,
sure,
an important. He would really appreciate me doing it, so I did it, or I didn't do it, and then he would ask
sure.
me, "Honey, have you done QuickBooks?" And I said no, and then he'd ask me again, and I still haven't done it. So then I would
Yeah.
finally reluctantly get in there and I do it, and then he would come back and say, "Honey, this is numbers. It's got to be perfect.
He'd,
There's no
he'd,
room
he'd
for
say, "Did you
color."
reconcile the accounts?" And you'd say, "Reconcile?"
And so then he would get frustrated because it wasn't perfect. I would
Right.
get triggered because I feel like he's judging me, he's being critical of me, and then we get into this big old cycle of insanity.
Yeah,
Well,
so
how, good. Tell me how to fix it.
hire out.
I got you. I love
Uh,
that idea.
so, you know, like if between the two of us, as far as skill set, I should be the one doing the QuickBooks. Like I can do
Sure.
computers, and I'm also analytical and all that. But also, when you look at things like I don't want to do it. It wasn't fun, and well, obviously it wasn't fun for her, and so it created conflict. And so this is also common even in some of the clients we've seen. I said, hire out. It
Sure.
really doesn't cost you much. Once you get the biggest cost is the front end, getting the book set up, right? But then the maintenance part, just updating, expenses, income and expenses, that's pretty easy, and it really doesn't cost that much, right? I mean, for most small businesses, it's not like you have to hire somebody full time. It's you
No,
just
there's
contract that,
bookkeep. Yeah, outsource it to a
out. It's
bookkeeper,
okay,
man.
right? Yeah, and it's so easy and it's very inexpensive, and it just takes that stress away. And then you can, and like for me, instead of me trying to argue with her about getting the numbers and the financial statements and all that, I'll just talk to the bookkeeper, right?
Yeah,
And then also it doesn't become personal if things aren't done right. We're not attacking. Hopefully they don't feel attacked, 'Cause,
sure.
right? Because it's a business issue, right? So, but when it's husband and wife, sometimes these disagreements feel personal. It becomes personal just because it's hard to differentiate between a personal attack versus just a business issues, right? So just hire those things out instead of trying to do it all.
Yeah, because you want to get the right people in the right seats. And we see that happen a lot with couples, how, they're not in their wheelhouse and their giftings, and it's just really challenging.
More than not, I see husbands dump the administrative stuff they don't want to look at or touch
Hmm.
onto the wife.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Almost, and forgive me if it sounds like I'm stereotyping, but I can
No,
tell you
it's
about every chamber of commerce meeting or group project. It's immediately a man that wants to dump the tedious work on the women,
yep.
and they usually get away with it. And if that's not her skill set, or even vice versa, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's very common. We see the same thing of cat. I mean, I just said it. I just did it with her. Right? I didn't
Yeah.
want to do QuickBooks.
No.
So yeah, for husband and wives to really thrive working together, it's one, they got to be in the role that they're gifted at, because then they'll thrive, right? Then they'll enjoy
And
it and they'll be great at it.
and that almost leads into the second thing you said, that was boundary issues of, I'm working on XYZ. I don't want to be micromanaged. This is what we said I was going to do. Do you see couples that are kind of, where they cross that line where they're not
Mhm.
letting the spouse work on whatever it is, sales, email copy, a networking event? What does that look like? Or
Yeah,
what's the most common things?
just overriding. So just even if it was that they work, maybe they are good at the bookkeeping or whatever, and they're doing the bookkeeping, but for whatever reason, the spouse, the CEO usually or whatever, wants it done a different way, or whatever. So, or it could be someone, one of them was in charge of HR, and then the spouse is the CEO, just kind of overrode his decision on an
Hmm.
employee issue in the middle of a team meeting too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, one, you can't do that. If you have a disagreement, you don't do it in front of everybody.
No.
I mean,
You don't do
if
that
you
in
want
front of the
husband,
children.
yes,
Hmm.
exactly. And so if you're gonna have a disagreement, you take it in the back room and you discuss it, and then you come with a solution that you back each other up on. Right or wrong, you've got to have your spouse's back. And you have the disagreement off, in another room. And but always have to be unified in your decision because otherwise it undermines the trust with the team.
Yeah, we had that with one of our clients. They were counselors. And so the employee would go to, I think she'd go to the husband.
The
And
husband.
if the husband told her no,
Because the husband was in charge of operations, so they would go to him for
so
operation
then
questions.
if the husband told her no, then the employee would go to the wife. And then they'll get the wife to say yes. And then it would cause conflict between the husband and wife because one's saying yes, one's saying no.
Yeah.
And and then we said to them, I'm sure you already realize this, but when you have kids,
Yeah.
one of your kids will go to one spouse and they'll
Every time.
parent and they'll say no. So then they go to the other one and then they're like, oh my gosh, we just got it. That's what she's doing to us. And we're like,
Yep.
So, because I remember I was like sitting there, and I'm like, okay, they're family counselors, therapists. I'm like, okay, let's say you're the parents,
Hmm.
and your team is your employees are your children. What's going on here? And the
Yeah.
wife's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
They're fighting each other. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you've got to stay unified in those decisions and make those, if you disagree, you got to take that off. But you cannot undermine your spouse's decision because then it just undermines the team trust and all that and the culture. And it's just, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. So it doesn't matter what the issue is. It's number one, you've always got to be unified. You've always got to have your spouse's back but have the disagreements offsite or in the other room.
And one thing I've worked on with clients in doing that, and it works at home with kids too. We got a 16, 14, and 12-year-old, and we finally learned at this point. If somebody comes to ask a bigger question, not can I have the last cookie? We don't need to consult on that, but can I go to so and so's house and spend the night? And we don't really know so and so. Before either of us will say yes or no, we try to, have you talked to mama first? Have you talked to daddy first? Okay, well, we let the two of us discuss it. Or mama said I could, or mama said I couldn't. So okay, well, let me chat with mama first just to clarify that's what we're going to do. And I've seen, and I say that to say I've seen clients and where they have, husband wife team, when they've got employees, they have clear delineations of who does what, but then it gets in a murky situation, they know to say, hey, did you ask did you ask Kay Lee about if you could go out and purchase make $1,000 purchase for us yet? Or if you did or didn't, that's fine, but let me know what they said and let me go consult with my business partner before we make that decision. Either way, I've seen that work more times than not. And in thinking about that, and golly, we're running fast on time, which is fantastic. Not how do you keep, what do you do when all of this spills over into family time? When it comes home around the dining room table, or mom and dad are a little frustrated because QuickBooks isn't reconciled, or because the proposal we made didn't get accepted. How do you keep that? How do you keep the work life balanced or separate, or do you?
Yeah. So you said earlier boundaries.
mhm.
So when you're home, you're home. This is personal time. You do not talk about business. So what happens is we just have to hold each other accountable for that because sometimes, yeah, at the dinner table, a business issue comes up. So, but we know to hold each other accountable to that.
Well, I was going to say we also have weekly meetings every Monday at 3:30, and we talk about these kind of things. We talk about finances, we talk about where we're at in the pipeline as far as sales. We talk about our calendars, what's going on, because I don't like to be caught off guard if Robert's going to be traveling for 3 days. I like to know
Mm-hmm.
ahead of time so that we can plan something either before or after. And if there's things we need to resolve, we have a placeholder for that as well. And if it's something that can't wait till our meeting, then we'll say, you know what? If we're in a place where we can't talk about it, because sometimes Robert's in here working in his office and I come barging in and I need to talk
Yeah.
about something. It's the worst thing because his mind is on something else. And then I totally blindside him and it doesn't go well. Okay, let's put it that way. So I just say, like, you know what? I really need to talk about something. When would be a good time? Or I
So
wait for him
don't,
to come out of his office and ask him that question. And then when we say,
sure.
okay, let's talk about it at such and such time, and then we can have a much better discussion when he's able to have that
Sure.
conversation with me, as opposed to me blindsiding him and catching him in the middle of something, and then he gets defensive, and then I get defensive, and then, we kind of just run for the races.
And that bleeds over into a thing I always tell folks in general in terms of having, focused work time. If you are popping in and out, asking every little thing that crosses your mind, that those weekly meetings, that's what those are designed to do. That you're not a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, but that helps you do your work, do your role in the business without, constant interruptions, which takes you 23 minutes to get back to a point of focus. But that's a different
And
podcast
even
topic.
yeah, and even works for work issues. Like we have a client that had one of his biggest client that probably represented about 65% of his revenue. He says they're great, but they're always calling me, like for this, that, and the other thing. And it's multiple
Yeah.
people. It's multiple people in the
Yeah.
organization, right? And I said, he's almost like thinking about letting him go because it's so stressful. And I'm like,
Sure.
do you have like regular meetings or weekly meetings to catch up on all these different issues? He's like, no. I said, why don't you start like weekly, I don't know if it's weekly or bi-weekly meetings for whatever to cover all these different issues, because otherwise what happens is they're just going to call you whenever something comes up because you don't have a
Yeah.
placeholder when we talk about it. And so they're just going to call you whenever, right? And so he's like, okay, so he started it and he's like, oh my gosh.
And it's going to lower
The
the
calls,
anxiety, because I
Yeah.
know Monday at 3 o'clock I can talk with you, and I can just write it down, all my questions or concerns in my journal, and we can have that conversation.
yeah, so most of that stuff gets covered in the weekly meetings. And if it doesn't, during the week, obviously things come up. And if now's not a good time, this is when we can talk about it. So, but if it happens at home, that's the same thing. It's like, okay, does this have to be talked about today or right now? Or can we talk about it in the morning when we start work or the next business day or our weekly meeting, right? And so that's what helps us because most of this stuff we don't have to talk about at home. It's just that it's on our mind. And if we don't talk about it now, when are we going to talk about it?
Yeah.
But if we do have a placeholder for it, then that's
And
fine.
that really helped with your client, didn't it? Because
Yeah,
then they were able to, like, everything was able to lower,
Yep.
and they were more peaceful, and they thought, okay, we can get all the questions asked at such and such time, and we don't have to call you all during the week with every little question we have.
And that's good in general, minus any family-owned business is just having a process in place. This is how we communicate. This is when we communicate, and if it's urgent, then we bypass that, and if it's not, this is how we handle it. Just telling folks in advance. I always explain to my clients it's a little bit like if you know that you have a flight and it's at 3 p.m. and then Delta hops on there and says it's delayed, but they don't tell you when it's delayed until. That creates a lot of anxiety.
hmm
But if they'll say, hey, it's delayed for 2 hours, you might not be happy, but your level of anxiety comes way down because we
yeah.
know when it's supposed to happen. And that's just a
Or
good,
go grab some lunch.
yeah. But it's a good rule of thumb, if you got that client or even, spousal interactions. I got this question. Well, okay. Every day at 3 p.m., that's when we're going to have a quick daily check-in. Wait till then, unless it's urgent. Same with a client. We got to ask a question right away. I want to hit Slack or DM, like, wait and, don't hit me after hours. Don't hit me on the weekends. Hit it this time frame or save it till our meeting. And that lowers the anxiousness
Mhm.
level.
Absolutely.
I've got like 10 more questions and don't have 10 more questions time about passive aggressive family members and people that like to stir the pot and all kinds of fun little things. But folks can get in touch with you to learn a little bit more about those things. So what you guys have given me, you gave me a link for a nice little. What'd you give me a link for?
So, marriedentrepreneur.co/do more, which is obviously the title of your podcast. But you can get on
Yeah.
there's a special landing page just for your audience, and there's a free
Oh,
assessment there for married entrepreneurs. How are you doing in
that a
work-life balance?
baby.
How are you doing at home and business, and how you doing it well? And score where you're doing good and where you might need some improvements with suggestions on how to improve in those areas. And then, of course, access to our podcast, Thriving in Tandem, as well as our book, Tandem, The Married Entrepreneur's Guide for Greater Work-Life Balance. So,
Yeah.
yeah, all right there.
Got my smiling face on there and everything.
Yep, sure.
Robert and Kay Lee, folks, I appreciate it. That was a fast and furious little period of time. Hopefully we can do it again. But thank you so much for being on today. And you two have a lovely day and holidays that are right around the corner.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Charles.
Charles. Great to be on.
Don't take off just yet. I've created a new program just for you. Join the Time Freedom community for entrepreneurs that want to work on their business instead of in their business. If you'd rather spend more time with family, friends, traveling, exercising, having the time to do what you want instead of, putting out never-ending fires, tackling another to-do list, and checking email at 9 p.m., then go to my website, yourcharlesalexander.com. If you've created the income you want but don't have the time freedom you deserve, then this is for you. And as always, if you don't, an angel may actually lose its wings. True story. Have a great day.